There, the important thing about analyzing propaganda is the approach I take is that propaganda tries to overwhelm the political with the personal anxieties. And the thing about this ad is it scares, it's simply there to develop and exploit the anxieties of the viewers, but it presents them a complete fantasy world. The classroom that's there with those communist banners that don't look Chinese at all, they look North Korean, shows a China which has both become extremely re-communist, has reverted back to the Cultural Revolution, and runs the world, dominates the world, has decided to take control of the world. And what it means in China, that we work, America, and I'm assuming the West as well, works for China. So that China has done something it's never done, it's never shown any interest in. It's now dominating the West, the other world. It's getting them to dominate it. This isn't really part of China's history. This isn't a likely outcome in the current globalization. It's a fantasy. It's an illusion. It's also a fantasy that presents a 1-minute lecture of the entire history of the world. It's also a fantasy, it's very interesting, that clearly defines what the viewer is supposed to see the United States as. You know, the United States is not viewed to other republics. It's compared to Rome. It's compared to the British Empire. And in the end, by implication, it's compared to the Chinese Communist state. The United States is viewed as a hegemon empire which dominates and enslaves other societies and cultures. And this is embraced, and the whole premise of this is that the hegemony, the domination, the power of the white dominated male America is endangered, and that there will be little Asian men laughing at you, and that you will be leveled impotent by these government policies. This is a very, very strange ad, and it's playing on people a very desperate need. Sadly, the fact of the matter is that this kind of neo-fascism or cryptic fascism is the disease of the West. There is no Marxism anymore in the West. Marxism is dead in the West. Marxism exists in the developing world. If you want to find Marxists, go to countries with very high GDP growth rates, like India, Brazil, China. You'll find Marxists there. You won't find any Marxists in the West. They're not active in the parties. They're not active. They simply are. They're just non-existent for all practical purposes. I mean, the major Marxist party in the UK doesn't even run candidates in the election. In the United States, you can't even reference a Marxist theory and being taken seriously in any form or any format. Marxism has been utterly purged. But when there are economic hardships in the West, we've seen this in Central Europe in the 1930s. We saw this in Britain in the 1970s and early 1980s. We've seen this in the Eastern Europe very recently. The way the Western societies emerge into economic collapse, particularly into when there's a reemergence of the free market system, and you get a system where the actual outcomes of capitalism come into play, which are both positive and negative for the people involved. The response is always this kind of nationalist, authoritarian, centralist, militarist, racist, hegemon view. The white male is dominant. And this ad, the thing that scares people from this ad, these people want everything in that ad. They want a 1-minute lecture of history. They want total nationalism. They want unquestionable authority stating what the world is. And they want a single nation running the entire world. They just don't want it to be China. They want it to be America. And what I would think would be interesting is that in a class where if a teacher came up and gave a 1-minute lecture about the history of the world, a bunch of hands would come up. And in a strong, viable, democratic republic, hands would rise up. And people would ask questions. Wait, isn't this simplistic? What are you saying, that Rome and Britain, Britain and the United States are the same? Britain had this empire, it was overextended. What about the impact of World War II on the British Empire? What about the impact of globalization? And in a strong, viable society, those people who raise those questions, who come from diverse backgrounds and diverse perspectives, are going to go out and build the cultural institutions that are going to allow the society to evolve and survive. In the kind of world that the Tea Party wants, in the world imagined here, the classroom, which is a single racial group, in this imagining they're all Asians, in which is also subtext for Hispanic, we've heard that repeatedly in this campaign. They just want all room that sits down, gets told by a Glenn Beck-like character in 1 minute, the world history, and then they go out and they do precisely what they're told. And the sad thing is and we saw that during Bush. We saw that was 1 minute. We had under Bush those 1 minute lectures of history. We had those 1 minute ideological presentations. We had that. We had the flags. We had the waving. We had the simple rules. We had the we're going to win and dominate. And we know what happens. I mean, we just need to look at Iraq. We need to look at the foreclosure issue. When did the housing collapse? When did the housing situation collapse? How effective were tax cuts in 2008? We've already tried what this ad and what the Tea Party wants. They're not introducing anything new. They just can't deal with the fact that they can't deal with their own impotency. They can't deal with the fact that in 2000 they got everything they wanted and it all collapsed. It all failed utterly. And so they're reimagining the past, deluding themselves that they didn't support Bush, that they didn't like it. They're repeatedly saying they didn't like Bush. The most insane delusional statements they say. Somehow there was a conspiracy, that they were really out there protesting, but there was a conspiracy to hold it. They're trying to delusionally rewrite history, and they're filling the entire future with this strange delusion, and they really are. Well, but we see this all over. We see this in Western Europe too. There's an emerging neo-fascist right-winger in Western Europe, and it really does. That is what actually will pose a threat, because if we don't build to our great strength in the West, which is our diversity, our openness, our discursiveness, the fact that I can push a button and respond to this, that we can debate, that we can discuss, and also the great strength that we are in a global economy that, for all of its problems, we don't try to take each other over. We don't try to conquer each other. We actually try to work to make a profit, if that's what we want to do, or to do NGO, global development, charitable development, that we work together in a global atmosphere. That's our strength. That's our element of greatness. The future is a classroom like this, where somebody gives a 1 minute lecture about the history of the world and gets battered by questions of inquisitive students from multi-ethnic, multicultural backgrounds who collectively build a better understanding and present more opportunities, more ideals, and more concepts into reality. Something like, people answering this, the fact of this video. I will say something to the people who put this video up, and I'd like to thank them that they have allowed video responses. Most political organizations don't, and that was very admirable that they have allowed video responses, and this has become a key point of discourse. And I really think that, I'm looking forward to hearing an analysis that backs up this ad. I haven't as of yet. I invite somebody to, but it hasn't happened, but maybe it will. Thank you.